Hey everybody, I'm back. Just wrapped up season 6 of My Hero Academia. And this one's pretty Empire Strikes Back type of season where things get very dark. Now, considering the creator of My Hero Academia is like a huge Spider-Man fan and Marvel, but also a huge Star Wars fan, it's kind of fitting that this is like a Empire Strikes Back type of moment. Uh, Before I continue on with my summary and my thoughts on the season, please do me a huge favor and follow me in the links in the description below, such as my YouTube channel, my Twitter, Twitch, Patreon. If you want to become a Patreon member, definitely check out that if you want to put in a certain request. And so to get things jumping off, I think we kind of brought up the character of Hawks last season. A very interesting character. Really like that guy. Now, he has been sent undercover as like a double agent to infiltrate the this secret movement called the Liberation Army, which is pretty much a mix between some villains with certain heroes who overall goal is to just get back to an free use of their abilities without being hindered by certain restrictions, because when quirk starts popping off, eventually in order to get things under control, because it was kind of like the Wild Wild West. Matter of fact, it is pretty much like, how the government kind of civilized the Wild West in historical period. Matter of fact, if you ever played Red Dead Redemption 2, you see that part of the storyline is during the era when the federal government is pretty much trying to civilize the Wild West, pretty much. And in My Hero Academia, that's pretty much at a certain period in the history have been when quirks was all the rage and people was going willy nilly. Vigilantism and then criminality, all this stuff kind of sent the world to kind of civil unrest until the government kind of set up a program, pretty much like the hero course and all the other stuff, to give people certain licenses if they want to be a hero in order to operate in like a frame where it's more controlled, so people can have a normal life and get criminality under control as well. But I guess certain individuals felt caged in a way. So Hawks pretty much subtly threw in to Endeavor, who's now the number one hero, in order to prepare, because they're planning on like a massive takeover in Japan. But now that thanks to the information he's been feeding them, they pretty much are doing like a strategic strike early, like at least a month early, because now the Liberation Army is working with the League of Villains, so they all are convening in this spot, and the heroes, okay, we're gonna deal with this now, while we got them, at least the large majority of them, all in one place. We don't get any other better time than now. So they gather the large quantity of pro heroes, and then have even some of the licensed students come in as registered backup, but in the most of them in the back of the line as support or helping evacuate the area, so that way in case things pop off, there won't be innocent civilians around to for them to worry about while they're trying to pull their focus into arresting these criminals. So and it's all like, pretty much planned out to a T. We know that at least one of the heroes, like Slide and Go, who's pretty much like Joe Swanson from Family Guy, with the dumbest looking power I've seen. He looked like he's just riding on roller skates. He pretty much, got snatched up when, like, it was so strategically planned. It was really cool. So we realized the doctor who'd been working with All For One, who helped facilitate, certain medical needs and, help with the overall plan, was making Shigaraki pretty much be, I kind of borrowed this analogy from Naruto with Orochimaru, pretty much, or not Orochimaru, well, yeah, kind of like Orochimaru, where it's like, okay, I need, in order to, not like immortality per se, but it's just my body won't last. Considering that I've been, accumulating all this power, it's been taking too much damage, especially after the massive fight with, at least last two fights with All Might. It's been taking a lot out of me. The spirit is willing, but the body, despite the level of power, can't take much punishment anymore. So I need to. He's pretty much using Shigaraki in a way. Let's be frank, but it's pretty much like a dark mirror image to Deku, where instead of getting his permission and passing along his skills, he's pretty much like manipulating Shigaraki, so he can pretty much force his essence in a way into him. Because as we learn, Shigaraki is the grandson of All Might's mentor, who, when she was trying to deal with All For One during her time as the wielder of One For All, she made a hard decision to, okay, this is way before Shigaraki was born. She had like a son. Don't know what's going on with who was the dad at all, but she realized, okay, there's no reason that All For One would not hesitate to use my family against me if he ever found out that I had a child. So I doctored some records. I pushed my family away as hard as it was. So, I know they can be safe. So I can pull all my energy and hoping to stop, All For One once for all. But she wasn't, successful. But not realizing, the damage it did to her son, because her son, who obviously felt some type of way of being, in a sense, abandoned by his mom. So he grew up resenting not only her, but all heroes in general. And he pretty much took it out on his family, especially Shigaraki, who had, who eventually had produced a quirk. So he pretty much been an abusive dad as a result of that. He doesn't want anything to do with, pro heroes or any of that stuff. And because of that, he completely traumatized the boy, and without, making sure that his son get the education he needs in order to properly wield his power, because he had the power of decay, in order to, manage it properly, he inadvertently caused, like, the birth of a future villain that everybody else got to now deal with. So he ended up, Shigaraki ended up accidentally killing his sister and his mom, and then later on his dad, and that's why those hands, that's all gripping all over him for most of the season or series, has been like, the hands of them and other people he killed, pretty much like his kind of like safety, a security blanket in a sense. Excuse me. And I'm not sure if it's a twist of fate or All For One eventually find out, but he found the boy, got it sucked into him, and pretty much groomed him into being his successor in a way. So now with the doctor, who's been prepping Shigaraki, trying to, because it takes time, put him in suspended animation so he can like feed, all these different type of abilities from All For One into him, just to make, a smooth transition in a way. But with the heroes now strategically attacking these particular places, everything starts popping off. The Nomus have been released, some more advanced than the others. A lot of heroes, got their work cut out from, they put on all the stops just to, put a stop to these Nomus for the most part. And then eventually this doctor, well, not the doctor per se, but Shigaraki eventually wakes up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We see that, the League of Villains, a lot of them are trying to fight back along with the Liberation Army, but they're being caught with their pants down. And then Twice, who's getting confronted by Hawks, who Hawks knew that, because this guy can make a massive army, would tip the scales easily in the villain's favor, had to be neutralized first and foremost. And he actually cares for Twice, considering he kind of established some type of, inadvertently, a friendship with the guy. But he knew he had like a job to do, and he had to put a stop to these villains. And the show does a great job to make, flesh out and give these villains a lot of layers, because a lot of these villains, seek, the wide array of society shun them in a way, depending on their mental stability or depending on what their powers is like. They're pretty much kind of like, are outcasts. But these villains who are true like psychos and evildoers, bring them in, and it's like, hey, we appreciate you wherever you are. You see, like Toga, her parents kind of shunned her because of her quirk, relying on blood in order to make it work. She kind of, was abused and shunned and, called like a freak or whatever. So that kind of messed with her mind. So of course, which Deku kind of points out later in the season, where it's like, these villains, a large quantity of them probably had experienced some horrible situation that kind of put them onto this kind of path in the first place. And it's like, I want them, like, they're still people. I want to help them, because they wouldn't have been villains if not for this terrible situation. But I understand his sentiment, but it's just like, at the same time, and which he understands, like they still need to be put in prison and all the other stuff, but it's hard for most people to feel all that much sympathy for a person who has committed like a large swath of atrocities, especially with that. You look at somebody like that muscle bound villain that Deku fought in the forest in the either last season or the season before last, trying to protect that little kid, and he got all these muscle fibers. That dudes clearly just don't care. You sometimes you'll get one of those. It's like, there's only so much sympathy can go by when people just know. Sometimes they're just assholes. But anyway, so Twice, only was able to set off one duplicate because Dobby shows up to take down Hawks, because Hawks' ability is very much weak against fire because his wings are very flammable, obviously. But he's so skilled, he managed to outmaneuver as long as he could against Dobby, just enough to take down Twice. So Twice is pretty much killed, but he's managed to give one, because he really cares for his friends and wants to see their dream come true to either sow chaos or be free to use their abilities as much as they want, or not being restricted, whatever the case may be. Or they look at heroes as like fools. They cling to this false sense of dream or whatever. They all got their own pretty much motivations and think like it deserves, that dream deserves to be achieved. Even if I have to give up my life in order to make that dream come true for them, I will do it. So Twice sent off at least one duplicate in order to save Compress and Toga from a hero. And Toga and Compress have to watch, pretty much in a sense, their friend die, which is a shame because Twice is pretty much like the Deadpool in a way, without the whole breaking the fourth wall aspect of it. Kind of clown buffoonery. And kudos to the voice actor, because he's like, goes from like very social, very serious, like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. That kind of switcheroo kind of thing. It's like very cool. So not only, a good chunk of heroes are starting to, lose a bit of people, a lot of the villains are losing a good swath of people themselves. This is like pretty much like an all-out war in a way. But and then you see that Mirko, this like rabbit lady, pretty much losing an arm, taking down a couple of Nomus while trying to stop the doctor, which they do eventually subdue, but they end up inadvertently breaking Shigaraki out of his his tube where he's in suspended animation, and thinking like, oh, he's just conked out. He's not gonna be. Oh, we managed to stop whatever was going on, and he's pretty much like the threat neutralized at this point. But he ended up waking up, and now that his powers are pretty much amped thanks to All For One, so his decay powers, he doesn't really have to touch anybody. It pretty much like go into like a vast radius in a way. There's like a shield hero that end up saving Eraserhead at the cost of his own life. So it covered pretty much like a large empty city. Luckily, they evacuated a lot of people, but as far, I'm not sure how vast the radius was, but it covered like a good chunk of area, up to the point where Deku, Bakugo, Shoto, and Gravity, where they're at, vacuuming the rest of the people, and it's just like, stop, just barely where they're at. It's like literally feet away from them, and they were so far back from the area where things was carrying on, the focal point where things were carrying on. That's how large that power just went. It's insane. Endeavor eventually, was taking on this guy, but thanks to these quirks that's inside Shigaraki, he can actually, this search ability they took from one of those rabbit or cat. I'm sorry, yeah, cat. Little those cat people from one of those training courses that was captured and got her quirk stolen. Her search ability was used in Shigaraki in order to find, because All for One is pretty much in the recesses of Shigaraki's mind, pretty much manipulating him to pretty much like go after, One for All, because he could finally steal it. Because not sure why looking back, I guess it has been attempts to trying to take back One for All. I guess at a certain point, All for One come to realize that the power he gave his brother, stockpile power, where, because he didn't realize that his brother did have a quirk, whereas pretty much like a pass on quirk, but he didn't have a thing to pass on, anything to pass on to. But thanks to the stockpile perk, thinking it was probably useless, gave it to his brother. Is when early on when the quirk started really manifesting. This is like many, many generations ago. So when he realized that his brother's been passed it on to a couple of people, and eventually they pass it on because they actually had like quirks on top of themselves, and then pass it on to another, and then another, and another. Eventually, when it kind of topples down to All Might, and then eventually Deku. So at some point, he kind of realized that, oh snap, he can be a serious threat to me one day. I'm going to have to steal this power in order to be the ultimate, pretty much God among quirks, pretty much. But in many attempts, whoever wields that power, whatever generation, has been failed attempts. So you figure like, okay, thanks to All Might, I definitely cannot take on any new wielders, and my immortality, in a sense, is pretty much my near immortality. It's pretty much just ran its course. Thanks to the doctor who had like a quirk himself, was pretty much like by at the expense of his strength, he can pretty much like live longer. So that kind of a part of that was pretty much put towards All for One at a certain point. That's why he managed to live as long as he has. So that's why he's always been around. Anyway, when Deku and Bakugo realizing, because word on the earpiece, because everybody's got this like walkies in their earpieces. It's like Shigaraki's looking for something called like One for All, and I was like, oh snap, he's coming after me, and I'm near all these people. I better go. So him and Bakugo go off, and then Endeavor is following Shigaraki. So and then eventually Gran Torino shows up. So now it's pretty much them taking on Shigaraki / All for One. But thanks to Eraserhead, who's pretty much like neutralizing his power. So now, despite that, this guy's still managed to utilize his physical prowess, pretty much like taijutsu in a way. Thanks to the doctor messing around and tuning his physical capabilities in order to be able to handle all the vast strength or abilities that's stockpiled in his body. Kind of similar to how the natural way that All Might been training Deku in season 1 in order to prep his body before he passed on the his one for all powers to him, because otherwise his body won't be able to handle it and he'll end up hurting himself, pretty much killing himself. So it's pretty much like an unnatural version of how Deku acquired all that stuff. Speaking of powers, throughout the season, we see that Deku's been communing with the past wielders of One for All, and pretty much like legacies. Pretty much similar to like the Avatar, where you get to speak with those past wielders because their DNA was they had to ingest the mentor's DNA in order to carry on the power. So it pretty much they swallow their essence. So that's where the inner space in their mind, they can be able to. This pretty much loud as hell in the upper apartment. God. So in their mind space, they're able to commune, and a lot of them have their own distinct powers and their own way of handling, or at least telling Deku how they about their history and how they had to handle villains in their era, because a few of them, especially the wielder of Black Whip, pretty much around the time when he was the wielder at the time, things were wasn't so organized as they are in modern day. This probably was early stages or prior to the whole school and organization. It's pretty much just trying to get things under control. But we see like also we see the All Might's mentor, and each throughout the season we see like him using Black Whip and then float, and eventually the danger sense, even though it's spider sense, let's be real, the sixth danger sense from another wielder, and then there's two dudes who look like they're in timeout or something, who at first didn't want to acknowledge Deku, but then eventually they do, and because it's pretty much like the first and second Hokage kind of situation. They're like they're not brothers, but they pretty much like they work together in order to stop, because they were around during the point where the first wielder of the stockpile ability was still around, and they found him locked up, thinking that he might be a threat, but they saw more. They saw him as more of like a victim and not another opposing threat, because All for One was pretty much like wreaking havoc and accumulating followers and everything like that. It's pretty much like a almost like a post-apocalyptic kind of situation. They're trying to fight back against this powerful quirk user. So I'm not sure what the situation was, but eventually he gave the brother gave the stockpile power to him, because his power was a Fajin, where it's pretty much, I'm pretty sure No, I think it was the other guy, the blue-haired guy with this hair in the ponytail. He had 5 genes, pretty much storing up kinetic energy in order to move uh, around in a quick, rapid succession. Uh, uh, I forgot what the other one was. Hold on. Okay, hold on. All right. Yoshi Shigaraki. Uh, 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 then you got Kodo. Salmon spiky hair. His main ability was like gear shift. Uh, 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 was only capable of working on small objects, enabling him to shoot projectiles faster than a bullet. Then Bruce, who was with Kudo, uh, 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 hold on, let me see. Like, how did they? All right. Uh, he's a man with a shirt swinging a large scar across his face, which he received during his final battle against All for One. And whereas a combat jack and he was the leader of a resistance movement who fought against All for One in his New World Order during the peak of his power. He did everything he could to fight back, including taking the lives of anyone in their way. He initially had plans to kill Yoichi due to his ties to All for One before chasing his heart and choosing to save him instead, inadvertently allowing One for All to grow in the first place. He received One for All accidentally after Yoichi's blood was spilled on him after being killed by All for One. After realizing he had 2 quirk factors in his body, he figures out Yoichi's will is now inside him and resolved to make sure it continued to live on. Even on the verge of death by All for One's hands, Kodo demonstrated his steadfast sense of duty. Okay, and that's how they come to realize how the DNA has to, go to another person willingly in order to make sure that stockpile works. Uh, 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 all right, Bruce. Bruce was part of the resistance fighting against All for One alongside Kudo. He was there during the assassination attempt at Yoichi. When All for One tracked Yoichi to the resistance base to reclaim him, he and Kodo escaped, but Yoichi was killed by his older brother. He was the one who examined Kodo's body to discover that he has 2 quirk factors now within him, and realizing the existence of Yoichi's lingering will. At some point before he was killed, Kudo passed on the quirk to Bruce, who then passed it on to Hikage before he too met an end by All for One's hand. So Hikage is one with the danger sense ability, and he's the one that kind of eventually trained his body in seclusion, pretty much living as like a hermit, realizing, okay, I'm not, at a point where I can, he said to himself, I'm not at a point to actually take on All For One, but what I can do is build up my body in order to handle everything. And that's where that mindset came from, that we saw All Might teaching Deku, is to train his body to have the muscles and the endurance and everything like that needed to handle the power. He wielded One For All the longest, for 18 years. So he eventually passed it on to Daigoro before he passed away at age 40. And that's the one with Black Whip. This is when like pro hero stuff started to become a thing in his era. I wanted to wait until this season before I got into the past wielders and get really in depth with each new ability that Deku eventually will start acquiring. Which, by the way, you'll think he'll learn each new power through the course of the season, but they really kind of put all into this one season. Usually most animes, you'll see them, the character acquiring new skills, at least one or two new skills each season as a series goes on. But I kind of like it when they let's, not to say they dump it all in one episode or anything like that, but you see them like through the course of the season, you see little by little, and naturally seeing him acquiring it. He likely used in conjunction with giving Quirk Black Whip. All For One attempted to steal One For All from Daigoro in the past, but failed, and Daigoro was fatally wounded in combat after getting trapped underneath some rubble. He gave One For All by giving him some of his blood and battle for. He gave N One For All by giving him some of his blood in the battle with All For One. N, who has like a smoke ability. It's like at least make like foggy smoke. Little is known about him, but he was not capable of bringing down All For One. He tried to steal, All For One tried to steal the power from N, but failed. But he was, N was cut in half by the villain. But he was able to give Nana One For All by giving her some of his hair, and that is All Might's mentor. I was like, while I'm here, like, who was her husband? Nobody knows. Kind of lame. But anyway, yeah. So this is breaking that down really fast. So now that we get to see like each of these past wielders and their own ability that also gets stockpiled and passed on. So now Deku has a very unique skill where he has these array of powers from these past wielders. So now he's trying to use them all in. Of course, he didn't really show the. I mean, up to this point when he's fighting Shigaraki / All For One, he only acquired the skill for Float and Black Whip and Danger Sense. So he had to use all those along with All Might's skills in order to do what he can, and he actually had to go past the 45% peak that he has, because that's about as much of strength he has to put in before it actually starts to hurt his body. But now realizing like who he's up against, he actually has to go all out, and this time he doesn't have Ari to keep him like rewound without damaging his body. But he also has help this time. So they managed to come together, and thanks to everybody collectively chipping away little by little against Shigaraki, while everybody else is dealing with Gigantomachia, who only answers to Shigaraki / All For One. He just like, only follows to the letter whatever order is given to him. And it's like he calls Gigantomachia, so his only orders to go to his master. So he makes a beeline despite Mount Lady and all the other class 1A and B, in their efforts into dumping this sedative into his mouth, which took a lot despite Dabi and the other little League of Villains that we've been following up to this point. Despite the efforts, they managed to get it inside the creature's body, but seemingly it didn't work, because I guess they think like, oh, he's too big, it's not going to do anything. And as a result, Mount Lady is injured, and then Miss Midnight is killed in the process, along with the Majestic as well, which a lot of the class is like distraught over that, thinking they failed or whatever. And as I'm going through it and I'm thinking to my mind, it's like despite it is sad, and I can't imagine like the psychological trauma they must be experiencing in this exact moment, but this whole point of the whole training. Matter of fact, it should have been in like the curriculum. It's like, you're going to lose people. And matter of fact, that should have been like, maybe not day one, but definitely at least some point in a month or two into their first semester, should have been like death. I'm pretty sure it's like something like, I imagine like the police academy or the fire department teach this kind of thing. It was like, look, there is a possibility, given the fact that we're on the front lines, you will have there is a possibility of you dying or your comrades dying. You need to be mentally and emotionally prepared for that. Not saying you should be cold-hearted about it, but just be aware of that, so that way you don't freeze up or have some kind of shock or whatever like that. Be prepared. If I was one of the teachers, that would have been one of the courses. I gotta make sure that they're mentally understood that, look around, you have like a class of like 25 people here. Look around. At least a good portion of you might die. Just want to let you know. I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. A portion of you at some point will probably die in battle, or by some kind of global catastrophe or something like that. There is a chance. So I need you guys to be, make sure you understand this is the likelihood. So like, you should back out now if you're not, if you can't handle that, because you're gonna have to be able to power through this. Not saying you should feel nothing about it, but you sitting there like blubbering in the middle of combat is not a good thing. Okay, I'm just saying this, but they sitting there standing around and like gobsmacked by the fact that Midnight and Majestic are dead, and it seems like they're, not sitting there like standing there aimlessly, but they're just like, oh my god, I can't believe this. This is what it means to be a hero. It's like, yeah, you're superheroes. You got into a school that teach you how to fight supervillains who have no qualms of killing you or anybody. A lot of them are complete psychopaths who had no qualms of killing their own families, let alone you. So yes, this is the job. And like, I just couldn't believe that they just got the gall to look gobsmacked, and it's like, is this what it means to be a hero? Yes, idiot. That's like, I'm sorry, I like Midnight. She was an awesome character. And it's a shame to lose her. Not the same degree as how it was awful to lose Neji in Naruto, spoiler alert. But it's just like being a ninja, it's like, yeah, you're in a chosen field that the likelihood of your mortality ending at any point is very high. But anyway, eventually, Gigantomachia does show up, and along with a bunch of Nomus, but look who shows back up. But Best Jeanist, who I honestly gotta say I kind of slept on in like early on in the series, but I forgot how awesome he is. Shows up after thinking he was dead because of Hawks, who kind of faked his death very, strategically. He actually did technically kill them, but his heart rate was slow enough to make it convincing, but then utilize one of those machines that they put Shigaraki in, put it, Best Jeanist inside, and then at some point managed to get him out. So he's healed enough, so he shows up in a very Deus Ex Machina, having a bunch of fiber coils, because he managed to control fiber, which is usually in clothing. Have a bunch of these, like several machines, with fiber coils in order to utilize to encase this gigantic beast, along with an unconscious Shigaraki, along with Spinner and Compress, and then Dabi, who at this point I can finally talk about now, is the long thought dead first child of Endeavor, who, thanks to Endeavor's obsession of conceiving a child with both quirk abilities of him and his wife, and causing him inadvertently putting it in his son, who's gotten obsessed with trying to make his father proud and utilize his flame ability, but it has like a drawback where it's like he doesn't have any kind of, unlike his father or Shoto, where they're not hindered by their own flame. Unfortunately, Dabi, he has an actual name. He goes by Dabi now, but I was going to call him Dabi because how I can remember. Now that Dabi, because of Dabi's own flames, is like, despite him training, even though he's told to stop because those flames will end up hurting himself, he won't be very effective. His flames turned to blue because he kept like trying to amp it up. But his father forbid him to use his powers, but he ended up being very abusive about it. And then pretty much, using his wife in order to make sure they end up having 4 kids, but the last one's the only one that managed to have birth quirks. But now he's, stunned that the fact that his son is alive and now is like a psychopath, murdered tons of people, and because of his use of his quirks, that's why he got those kind of burn damages all over his body. Which I gotta say, Dabi is honestly one of my favorite anime villains, probably in the top 5 personally for me. uh uh it's like I love when he's kind of like finally he's always been played so cool and like, very like stoic and like uh uh one of those kind of edgelord type of characters, but finally he can actually be honest with everybody. He can finally let loose. He started dancing like, and like, dancing hell with me. And I just love his voice, like, "Hey, I'm loving this. You ready to dance in hell with me, Shoto?" It's like, oh yeah. It's like I just love that. I'm not doing a good job, but I love his voice, and just love the way he just be able to cut loose because he's completely snapped. Because thanks to what his father kind of forced him to be obsessed with trying to be the number one hero, but then it's like kind of warped it and pretty much essentially abandoned him in order to put all his focus in the next child, but then eventually in the next child, until Shoto came around, where he's kind of like ignored all the past three in order to put all his focus into this one, because he wants to force his goals onto his children in order to beat All Might at some point, because it obsesses of being the number one. So because of that, hold on. So, because of that, now Dabi's back, and now Shoto is fighting his own brother, who they all thought was dead, but now while he's telling them off, he has one of the liberation guys who's pretty much like the long haired guy who's like a computer whiz, send out a video to the media, pretty much all over Japan. Everybody's watching it on video of Dabi with a DNA test and the story about how he became to be, and that he is the son of Endeavor, who has forced himself into because he's from like a rich family, got into this marriage with this his wife, because of their struggling family. They're from a prestigious family, but they're going through money issues. So they kind of did this kind of this what they called it, it's an arranged marriage, but there's another word to it, a dowry kind of situation, where it's like, okay, it's mutually beneficial for both of us. But he actually did care for this woman, but then it's kind of like, after he started having children with her, that it grew, that love became less and less, where it's like kind of, at best ignore them, at worst kind of, it's kind of like abusive. It's mostly towards the a couple of the kids, where they either felt neglected, or if he has put his focus into him like he did with Shoto, where it's kind of like, kind of abusive, trying to get him to be like a mirror image of him, which is kind of like a mirror towards like how Awful One is treating Shigaraki, where it's like, I want you to be like me, or how Deku wants to be like All Might. It's very like parallels between these characters, where the proteges, need to be, or has to be, or forced to be like the predecessors instead of being their own thing, or at least force the predecessors, trying to, well, not aside from All Might, trying to force their own goals onto the predecessor, so it could be like a carbon copy, where it's like, do this way, or like, my way is this way, I need you to do like this. And it didn't get as egregious like Shigaraki, but is just as damaging as you see with Dobby or the other children, where aside from maybe the daughter who was a little bit more forgiving and showed us just getting to a point where they come to realize like the different level of damage he's doing with these kids. So now the whole world, including Natsu, who ironically, when his children, the second born boy, his name is Natsu. It's kind of ironic, but Natsu from Fairy Tail, who's clearly Natsu from Fairy Tail, is watching with his best friend at home and listen to this villain who he couldn't believe, like, this is all lies. The Endeavor wouldn't do this. And it's like, now thanks to Dobby, and then later on thanks to All For One, the larger society in Japan are, at least a good quantity, are now distrusting of heroes. It's kind of like with the whole Green Goblin, despite whatever you did for them, eventually they will hate you. You can see, like, because society can be fickle. They can love you one moment, then from one mistake or when they find out some kind of dirty little secret about you, they turn on you very quickly. Especially something like, like abandoning or abusing your kids. It's like, yeah, a lot of people be hard pressed to glorifying a supposed number one hero when they realize that you have been like neglecting or abusing your children in some shape or form. But then Best Jeanist shows up and Lenillion shows up, thanks to Ari, who has been practicing with the powers, managed to rewind his body back to the point where he actually can use his powers again. But even still, thanks to All For One, pretty much taking over for the most part of Shigaraki's body, managed to escape because his body didn't have time in the chamber to be 100% prepared. It's only like 70%. And given like the stressors been put on the body, it's like, okay, we gotta get out of here. His body needs to rest, but not right away. He then make a quick pit stop to several prisons, including the number one prison, Tartarus, where the real All For One, along with Stain and a bunch of other villains that we saw throughout the series, as being locked up at completely prison break, which from this one and a couple other ones caused like a massive swath of villains running amok in the city, giving the heroes no time to rest or barely time to mourn their losses. So it's completely hectic. And on top of that, the regular civilians are turning their back on the heroes. Hawks is his voice is like needs time to heal thanks to all the flame and probably the smoke inhalation thanks to Dobby. His wings have been burned off, so it takes time for them to like heal back up. Best Jeanist is still trying to recuperate because he went all out pushing his powers to the limits in order to restrain this gigantic kaiju, pretty much. Deku's arms and legs are pretty much busted up, but thanks to all that training, he's managed to, build up a better tolerance. But still, though, you had to take it easy. And Gran Torino's got to get fixed up. A lot of heroes like Midnight and Majestic are dead, and Eraserhead lost a leg because he's trying to, thanks to him and the others, trying to avoid getting hit by one of those overhaul darts that neutralize powers, because his eyes was on Shigaraki the whole time just to neutralize his right away abilities, so he won't just cause complete utter devastation with decay. And a bunch of villains managed to get arrested and others are dead. there was really no winners in this. So now Deku, and then Hawks, and then Best Jeanist, and then eventually everybody, at least so far as maybe not the citizens, but the Class 1A, and I'm sure some of B, are fully aware, thanks to Deku coming clean about the whole one for all situation, which they kind of disappointed that they wasn't kept within the loop, like they couldn't handle that kind of information. But it's like, you didn't need to know that, like what? But whatever. So, it's not just like a secret between All Might, the police chief, and a couple of pro heroes, and Deku's and Bakugo, Best Jeanist, Hawks, Class 1A, a lot of the teachers. Now everyone's pretty much in the know about this. But Deku pretty much, have his dark turn, a quote unquote dark turn, where he feels like, okay, because I'm being sought after, I need to separate myself from UA and my friends, because I'm the one they're after. So he goes, and he got this dark rabbit look on his face, kind of creepy looking. He's in his like goth stage kind of thing, put it that way. So All Might is pretty much like his Alfred at this point, keeping in line on the phone line with him, along with Endeavor and Hawks and Best Jeanist, trying to do what they can to help the citizens, despite their anger towards a lot of the heroes, even though a lot of them are understandably angry. They probably lost friends and family into this whole catastrophe, despite their best efforts. But all they can do is, still try. And most of the pro heroes are either dead, or a lot of them are starting to retire, or just straight up give up. But things are gotten their most hardest phrasing. So the heroes are pretty much spread thin, along the fact that they, a lot of them and the police force are trying to wrangle up as many villains that escape as possible. So now some citizens with pro tools, who are untrained in using them, are taking it upon themselves, because they don't trust the heroes no more, are taking it upon themselves to take on any thugs that's trying to take advantage in their neighborhoods. But because it's they didn't train for this kind of stuff, a lot of them are causing more harm than good. So it's causing even more stress and upheaval. Deku, learning his abilities, is trying to save his, pretty much like a vigilante at this point, trying to jump around, saving as many people as they can, stopping as whoever stray villains as he can, rarely without rest. If it wasn't for All Might, he probably wouldn't be fed, because he pretty much put all his focus into that. Because it kind of reminds me of Jaden in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX in like the final season, where given the fact that how he started, if you recall Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, how he started is where he's kind of very happy-go-lucky kid, but going through all these different type of villains and all these trials and tribulations and all these kind of stressors, it kind of forgotten who he was. He kind of forgotten himself. If you remember, because that was like I remember my review. By the way, check out my all my Yu-Gi-Oh! Review of each of the seasons and stuff, which is up on my YouTube channel. I discussed this in the final season of GX, where Jaden's pretty much like, instead of enjoying the duel, he's pretty much trying to wrap it up quick. He doesn't take his time with it. It's like a lot of his duels in the final season, up until like the last episode, he's pretty much up until the last episode with his duel with Yugi, he's pretty much trying to wrap things, up in a few turns, because he doesn't take joy in it anymore. It's always been like dueling for the sake of somebody's life or his own life or something. It's very life or death stuff. It's not for joy anymore or for fun. And that's where Yugi kind of reminds him that he doesn't need to take every duel so seriously. There's joy in this. At the end of the day, this is still a game. It's not a life or death situation all the time. And I, think that's what Deku had come to, thanks to his classmates coming to him to remind him, especially Bakugo, despite how my dislike of that character because of this ramped up bullying for the first few seasons, come to understanding that you forgot to smile. That's one of the things that was taught by All Might, where it's like, the civilians need to know that everything's gonna be okay by smiling and let them know, like, when they see you thinking, like, when you see you smiling, when they see you smiling, they thinking like, oh, he got everything under control, everything's gonna be okay. And that's the whole point of what one of the reasons why All Might was so all inspiring, because when he shows up, he always with a smile on his face, knowing that everything is okay, despite what might be going on internally with him. He will not let that show to the citizens that are having part of the worst day of their lives. And when they see you're smiling, not like an idiot, but it's like confidence of a smile, showing that no matter how dire the situation is, we got this. Never fear, because I am here. And that's what. And Deku's not alone in this, and that's what his friends remind him. He doesn't have to carry this weight anymore. Whoever come about with All For One will be by your side to help you with this. Because I think that is like the difference. That's what separates him and the past wielders, because the past wielders have by and large had to handle All For One single by themselves in some facet, because they didn't have I'm pretty sure they had support networks, but they view that this is their sole responsibility. But Deku, luckily has friends that will shoulder this burden, and I'm pretty sure this time around he will be best equipped to probably put down All For One permanently, because he has friends to shoulder the burden and lend a helping hand. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what's been carrying on with this season. It's a very dire situation. There is one final season. I haven't even watched this. I've been waiting until I cover season, the first 6 seasons on this channel before I watch the final season. So it's going to be completely new to me. Thanks to All Might, I almost forgot about this. Stain, before he escaped, saw that one of the security guards was, cradling this box with some info that he ended up giving to All Might, and in a way, Stain kind of reminds All Might of what it meant to be a hero. That despite some people defacing his statue, the last person he saved, the woman in his final battle with All For One, before his power completely gave out, she comes by almost every day to clean up the graffiti and whatnot off of his statue. And it kind of reminds, All Might of why he became a hero and everything like that. He gives the information that he gathered to All Might. So he can utilize this in order to figure out All For One's, plan, which pretty much they got like at least 3 days before he's fully healed and ready to really kick things off. He even sent like certain individuals like Lady Nagun, who was a pro hero, but like Hawks, who eventually replaced her. And by the way, we get to see a moment with Hawks where he, goes up with his origin story and see like he comes from an abusive household. His mom, I won't say like junkies, but pretty much like very kind of much degenerates. The father was a criminal, got busted by Endeavor, ironically, who was abusive towards him. But then the mom pretty much gave, in order to have a decent life and some money to live comfortably and just to have some kind of stability for once in her life, gave her rights to her son to like the hero agency, so he can be trained to be a hero and utilize his ability to do this kind of espionage work like Lady Nagun, who was a pro hero and was kind of like a black ops type, who below the surface was like a black ops type of character who pretty much lost herself and got disillusioned by what is supposed to have been what the UA agency was, propaganda was. And she was forced to do very dirty work in order to keep people safe, and kind of bit by bit lost a piece of her soul. It's kind of like if the way she started out was kind of like what you see with Uravity, and then put her in situations where she got little blood on her hands because her ability, her arm can be shaped like a gun, and she can fire take pieces of her hair and utilize it as bullets and fire it with super accuracy at very long ranges. And thanks to Deku getting through to her, she come to realize that it wasn't all lies. And she has like a talk with Hawks, who showed her that, like, I understand, I've been where you are, but, I managed to come out on the other side of all that stuff. So there's that. So now, after all this, realizing they're so short-staffed and things are getting hectic, All Might sent word out to other countries, because especially America, because now this big lady named Star and Stripe flying on freaking I forgot what those kind of fighter jets, from America, because when he was being mentored, he went abroad to America to train under his mentor. He essentially had two mentors, and ironically, both of them had to be buff muscle mommies. So Star and Stripe, there's a reason why his moves are named after states in America, because Star and Stripe was his teacher abroad. I guess it's kind of like the way Deku had All Might as a mentor, but also Gran Torino. I guess Star and Stripe is kind of All Might's Gran Torino. So her and a couple other heroes from different countries all like have so much respect for All Might. It kind of goes to show that All Might is kind of like the Superman of this world that everybody from many countries respect, because he was such a great hero that when he asked for help, everybody it's like, I'm going. I don't like. I ain't trying to listen to all the red tape. All my asking for my help, I'm going. So, and Star didn't even bother to ask for any kind of permission. She just, went and took off and got some American soldiers to, help, fly her all out. I'm surprised that it's not like a little bit more help from these different countries, but maybe we'll see that in the final season. But like, I've been hyped for this final season. It was like, oh my God, because I don't know anything about Star and Stripe. Matter of fact, I think it was like over a year ago, I walking past this bookstore and they had all these manga there, and one of them was a manga pretty much depicting, I guess, what's going on in the final season. I didn't want to look at it at all because, like, I knew that I was going to cover the final season. I do not want to get spoiled. I won't be utterly surprised. So I'm going to be going through the final season. Then I will be doing a movie review of My Hero Academia as well before I get into another anime that I haven't watched before at all, but it's one of those hype ones that everybody seemed to love. I'm curious to know what the hype is about, but I'm leaving it as a surprise. But that was my complete thoughts on season 6 of My Hero Academia. And let me know what you guys think of it all. And hopefully the final season will end on such a good note. At least I think it's supposed to be the final season. I don't know. But so far as season 7, it's coming up soon. Once eventually I wrapped it up, because it's like 42 episodes, I think, or 40-ish. Probably less than 40, because I'm not sure if like the Hulu's counting the sub episodes along with the dub version. But anyway, I will see you guys soon. Take care. I got a movie review because, it's February month. I got like a romantic comedy that I want to review with you guys. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Otherwise, have a good night. Peace.